Right, let's just go. So we are live. Hello and welcome to the Fiona Small Show. I am live with two amazing guests. I just want to say a big thank you for joining me today. I have Nate Evans and Dr. Solomon Tension. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the Mums Edition. Today, we are going to be discussing topics around motherhood, predominantly motherhood for those who are raising boys alone. I have two astute powerhouse men who are doing some phenomenal work in the community, and I feel so privileged to have you gentlemen with me. I just want to say a big thank you. And for those that are watching, I just want you to know that this is a show where we are going to be finding some solutions. You'll be getting tips, strategies, and just signposts to where you can get support. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Nate, and I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you too, and to have this powerful conversation. My name is Nate Evans Jr. I'm a motivational speaker, best-selling author of I Love You, Letters of Love from Black Men to Black Boys. And my main mission is to normalize love amongst Black men and Black boys. I believe that once that starts within the household, it can change the whole family trajectory, and ultimately it can build the community.
Wow, I love that. Normalize love. Do you think it's really interesting when we have to kind of begin to normalize love when it should just be a standard thing? Thank you so much for, making that your quest and your mission, because it's fundamentally important. So thank you. Welcome, Dr. Solomon. I know you've been on already, so handing back over to you to introduce.
Yeah, so thanks again for this opportunity to join you on your show. And Solomon Tension, the author of the King in Me series, which is kind of how you and I connected a couple months ago. And so my work focuses on helping men of color discover their purpose and working through their life's trauma and challenges, and to evolving to their best selves and become the king in them. So that's what my book focuses on, and I'm happy to be a part of this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what I love about how we've all connected is the sheer fact that it's come from a place of, one, being vulnerable, two, putting up my hand and asking for help, and recognizing that actually you don't even need to, feel that you're alone in your circumstances and your situations. There are people out there that who have built like enterprises like yourself, but also have resources that we can tap into. So I'm really passionate about finding ways for mothers to navigate their way through this kind of solo motherhood journey. Sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in what you don't have and forget what you do have. And in me being quite open with my situation, I've managed to find you two gentlemen who have enabled me and allowed me to feel, can I say this, at ease with what I now feel, the task that's been set before me. And it's an overwhelming space. There's a big responsibility on mothers' shoulders. And Nate, I know that you work with a variety of young boys and men. You've probably seen so much. What is it that we need to do to kind of make sure that if we're going to look for those rites of passage for our boys to ensure that they stay on the straight and narrow? And my boy's 9, he'll be 10 very soon. At what age should we start to begin to look for those, key role models?
I would say starting now, at the age that you said that he is at. I think it's important that we start as early as possible to have those male role models in place, right? Those positive male examples in place, not to necessarily have them within programs, but to have them around healthy men who can exemplify what that means, right? Not individuals who are going down this other destructive path that are still acting childish, right?
Yes.
We want other men who are acting in a way that is powerful and upright. Not saying that we're perfect, but you want individuals around that child. You want them to see that man who is, standing up for women, who is doing the right things, who's respecting women, who's responsible, and who's holding himself accountable to his own actions. These are the individuals that you want to look for. These are the individuals that you want to have your son around, right?
Absolutely.
You want him to watch videos of these individuals, to be around those type of people within your community or other communities. These are the things that you want to see, because as young men and as young boys, we follow those examples of what we see.
Absolutely.
As it pertains to men. So it's huge that he sees the right examples.
Yeah. And Dr. Solomon, I mean, when we talk about examples, like, how do we recognize when the examples are not that great? Because sometimes some people think, well, at least they've got so and so in their life, or at least they've got, and they know that's not who really should be who they aspire to be. They don't want, there's some people I know that they don't even want certain individuals around their son, but they'd rather settle than to have nobody. How do we go about stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that, just hearing what Nate was articulating, I think that for single moms who are trying to identify the best male role models is to really sit back and think about. And I think it starts with that single mother perhaps having some conversations with older men about the importance of male identity and what are some of those key characteristics that young male that child or should aspire to, right? And then I think that you go and find men who display those characteristics. I like to call that, the fruit, right? You go and find men who attribute that fruit, right? And so, because you're essentially, and we talk about this all the time for which is why I respect single parents so much. You're doing dual roles, right? Essentially, right, in the life of a young male, it is father's role to affirm the identity. So you're kind of having to kind of be creative to kind of help shape that in your son, and that's a challenge. And so I think that number one, you go seek out older men to think about what are some of the characteristics that your young man should embody. You also think about it as a parent, how you're cultivating purpose, right? So think about, innovation and how you want to inspire your child to do that. Then I think thirdly, you go find men who display fruit of those characteristics. So that way, as a parent, there's a clear alignment, right? And then those are the men that you surround your child with. And then you allow them to grow. And then as your child grows, you may see the need to get a different circle, right? Because as he grows and develops, he's gonna deal with different challenges. Now, in an ideal world, that community may walk with that child into manhood, which is beautiful. But I think it's okay if you gotta continuously improve or enhance that circle as he grows, and to kind of usher that in. Lasting, what I've seen happen is you'll see as the young man matures into high school, he will be able to identify other mentors that he deems as value as well, which I think is a really good kind of full circle of how that process works. So I think that was probably a lot, but I think that's kind of one way I would recommend that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Parents try to find the right role model.
Yeah, and it's that mirroring, isn't it? Because I think it's every mother's hope that our children will gravitate to the right influences, and sometimes you see them and you're looking and thinking, no, don't hang with that company, or why are you choosing these friends? I'm that mum. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I've probably had conversations with my son and said, why do you play with those boys? Or why don't you play with these set of I'm being totally honest with you. I've actually encouraged him, because what I find really interesting, and as a community, what I found really interesting is that we are now having to unpack and reshape and redesign a lot of the brokenness of what's happened prior, because some people examples or what we've normalized has been to our devastation, you know, and to our destruction. And now when you see that there is a high number and a high proportion of single mothers, of men who haven't kind of taken up their responsibility, so now we're having to find other individuals to help us parent, to help us raise these children. Do you know that there's a time when I felt very embarrassed to feel that, why do I have to ask these questions? I look at my social circles, I look at my peers, I look at even some of the families at my son's school, and I think, but why is it that there's families over there that are doing what they need to do for their children, and there's me over here actually thinking, where are my role models? Who do I need to have around my son? Where are the influences? And suddenly I had to take away that mum guilt, which we've spoken about quite a lot. I'm very vocal about mum guilt, but speak about, actually, don't play the blame card, but look for individuals will say, I'll mentor your son. I'll step in. Here's some help. Here's some resources. For mothers who may not be as confident as me, and they're looking for individuals, I really want to kind of echo that. Don't be kind of suffering in your situation where your children are the ones. I've had to put a lot of pride aside. And when I say pride aside, I mean, it's more about the early intervention. Would you agree with me, gentlemen, when I say early intervention?
Absolutely.
And this early,
Correct.
yeah, it has to start not when I'm saying, oh, guys, guess what's happened? It's more about me saying, hello, do you mind helping me? I have a young man who is going to grow into manhood. Do you have any strategies? You guys are grown. Help me with it. And, you know, I feel more empowered now knowing that individuals like yourself would be like, yeah, here's a book. Yeah, here's some resources. How far along this journey of finding these solutions would you say we are? Because I think we've just scratched the surface. How far do you say we've come?
Yeah,
anyway.
I think we're kind of really just getting started on this.
Yes.
Now obviously it's been going on for years and things like that, but I believe the capacity of resources has grown a lot. Especially I'll say with like the millennial generation, like my generation, there has been this like halt, like we want things to change. We don't want them to be how they were. We've seen our parents, we've seen our grandparents, our great grandparents, and we're in a position now to where we can consciously make that change. So now we're creating resources. And I believe that we will begin to see the fruit from these resources, a little further down the line with this next generation and the generation that follows that one. But I think right now we are on the ground level of building a solid foundation when it comes to resources that can empower young children, especially young boys, and really help them to understand the world around them, understand who they are, and really begin to validate them and enhance their lives so they can walk it out in a more mature way than generations before them. I think that was a huge thing. There wasn't a lot of maturity and accountability. And I believe that we are at that point in history to where we can either step up because we're conscious and aware of it, or we can fall back and things can stay the way that they are. But I believe a lot of us are stepping up, myself included, as well as Dr. Solomon here, stepping up and stepping into that role that we need to change the future. So I believe that it's happening right now. We're on the ground floor right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Dr. Solomon and I, when we connected, it was, me stretching out my hand and saying, look, like this is a situation, and coming up with, very innovative solutions there's something so powerful about that. Now, the guide stroke book that we've put together was effective ways of how to improve the single parent experience, because there is a narrative, there is a narrative, there's a stereotype, there is, when I communicate and I articulate myself as a young Black female, mother of two, who is raising a son, oftentimes I get the raised eyebrow to say, oh, she speaks very well, or she's very articulate, and all of the rest of it. And you know, I think when we kind of embark on situations in our lives that we have no control over, when life happens, I always say when life decides to happen, it happens, and it happens for many of us in a way where we're like, I actually didn't deserve that. There's two things that I can do with this. I can actually play the victim and roll over, or I can be like, do you know what is this going to teach me, and what am I going to do with it? And Dr. Solomon, when I encountered you and we came together, and I've been very vocal about this, I was at a really low point. I was seeking so much solution. I don't even know how Dr. Solomon would even have described it. Like, I sometimes wonder, like, for you, you might have been thinking, what's going on? I mean, I'm in the UK, you're in Texas. I mean, there's so many different things. You could have been thinking, don't you have a brother? Don't you have a neighbor? Don't you have somebody that you could talk to? You know what I mean? But we managed to pull this off. Now, that was just me being, like I said, vulnerable and asking for help, and seeing something in you, Dr. Solomon, that made me realize this gentleman can assist with, there's two things you could have said, yes or no. And just being so open. I mean, what would you say to others, Dr. Solomon, about being open to not only finding their own healing, because we're all on a healing journey, but being able to tap into resources?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question, because I want to, further add to what Brother Nate was saying. We are on ground level of this work. And I think that for those individuals who may be watching this show, and we know that this is going to go worldwide and viral. And so I want to, hopefully those that are watching, men, this will encourage you to share your story. And I think that, I've always believed that whatever you experience, whatever hurt you in life, or whatever experience that you had that may have had an impact on you, it happened for a reason, and it's because you were called or designed to heal that. And so some men, they may decide to build a platform like Brother Nate and I. Some men may just decide to be very open about their story.
Yes.
And I think that if more men would be more open about their stories, I think that the single moms who need that support will feel comfortable to say, you know what, there is a group of men out there who have struggled, who have went through some of the same situations that my son is going through. I know it because they talk about it, they're open about it, right? And I want to go and seek them for support. And I think that it goes both ways. We've got to provide more resources for single moms, but also as men, we've got to be more transparent and open about our stories, and do in a way that we're willing to help and to make ourselves available, that we're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out, that we did have a journey to get here. And so I think that is kind of my appeal. And then I think that, hopefully that provides some answers to your question.
Yeah, and I love what you've said. I mean, I know, Nate, you want to jump in, but do you know what's really interesting is that I think you men are beginning to understand the power of sharing your story. You're now becoming more open. I think even us as females are recognizing, how we need to approach you and how we need to understand you, because there are things that depends on, what you normalized, what you were raised with, how you communicated in your household as children. Men, they say men don't talk, or you don't. We as a community were taught not to talk about certain things. There's some people that their memory of like either their fathers or the communication has never been healthy, because there was never that element of talk, share, say what's going on. So, I mean, Nate, how would you encourage other men, I should say, to begin to say, share your feelings? Remember, men have been told, boys don't cry, be a man, be strong, don't show your emotions, you're weak, you're this. Now you're saying, talk. Men need to talk. We're shifting the goalposts here. What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so what it means is this. We understand as men what the other side feels like, right? We understand what the pain feels like. We understand what holding our emotion in, what that feels like, right? We've seen it for generations, so because we know exactly what that feels like on the other side when we hold our emotions, when we don't share our stories, when we bottle things in, when we put on a facade of toughness, of strength, or what we think is strength, we realize that that doesn't work out in the long run. We've seen individuals break down. We've seen the violence that comes from it. We've seen the trauma. So for me, it's like, why not try something else? Like, I know what this looks like. I'm not 100% sure that me releasing my story will make me feel great or it will make me feel better than I did before, but I also don't know. But I do know for a fact that if I hold these emotions in, they're going to eat away at me. So why not try something different? And that was how I got started in doing that. I was like, I just want to try something different. I know what it looks like for my dad, for my pop, for the men in my community that held those things in. I seen the trauma. Yes. Because I know that, I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work great, but I'm going to try it out anyway. And from there, I started to find freedom and healing. And there's motivation in that, especially for other men. It's almost like we give each other permission when we share our story, right? Because I grew up where you had to hold things in, and that's what made you strong. You couldn't be emotional until I got on the other side. And I was like, oh, the real strength is in the emotion. It's in being vulnerable. It's in being transparent. And when I started to do that, other men felt like they had permission to go ahead and get stronger as well. The problem is that we had a misconception of what strength looked like. So now we're bringing it to the forefront of like, hey, you know, that actually wasn't strength. I'm not sure where we got that from. But this right here is much more difficult and challenging to be vulnerable than it is to be angry and hold something in. That's actually our natural like inclination. It's very easy to do that. But if you want to get stronger, be more resilient and free yourself of that burden, of that pain, try sharing your story. Try getting those things out that you hold in.
Amazing.
Yeah, and, man. You know, Brother Nate's preaching, man. He's preaching. That's good. That's good right there.
Oh, man. And even our little ones, because do you know that there's a little tendency to kind of raise mummy's boys? And when I say mummy's boys, like everybody's heard about, there's this thing with mothers and their sons and mum. And I get it. You know, there's just something real. There's a really unique bond between mums and their boys. You know, we kind of, and I didn't realize it until I became, because me and my sister, we have this running joke about my own brother where we're like the golden child. We call him the golden. He's the only boy. My brother's the only boy, but we call him the golden child because it's like when he's, you know, that's your brother's food. That's this, you know, don't touch the, and we're like, oh, the golden child's food, don't touch it. But then look, becoming a mother myself to a son, and you know, I love my daughter. I make sure that I'm not saying anything where it's like there's no favoritism here, but there's something unique about the bond between mothers and their son. But also, I am very aware that there has to be, I don't want to say a cutoff, but as he transitions and into young adolescence, and then even when he gets into teenage, I want him to kind of also be, you know, I've been with mummy's boys as well, where you're like, oh, lady, really? You've not done us women any favors raising this mummy's boy, you know, and I don't want to be, sorry, I'm just saying, I don't want to be that female where people think, oh gosh, Fiona, you've smothered this boy. He's now a mummy's boy. And then, you know, one day a female looks at me and like, really, is this the best you've done? So what is that balance? And when you're talking about this kind of, because I feel what you're saying is so right, but there's also equally another side to that, because we've got to strike that balance. And I'm not sure if you're able to kind of answer it, but what should that look like so that we don't raise these kind of dependent on mummy boys? Anyone can jump.
I'll let you go, Dr. Solomon, on that one.
I don't know. I know that was tough. I was hoping you was going to take it, but I don't know. I think that you got to have balance. I think if you go to it raising your son with that idea that you want them to have balance, and I think that by it goes back to the original point, by having your son around, if you're a single parent, those positive males that display those characteristics, I think that will serve that balance for you. And I think that from the codependency standpoint, you've got to, and this is more my psychology side of my work coming through, you've got to allow your children the space to be innovative and to develop and to make mistakes and to try things and to be independent, right? I think that you've got to instill that in your child as well. That's important. And I think that you've got to find creative ways to affirm their identity and who they are, codependent or without the parent being around. Who are you as a young male? I think all that kind of plays in the role. Of course, when you start talking about mama's boys and men that grow up that are still boys, there's a whole lot that we can dive in. I know Brother Nate, he may be able to provide more context to that, but I think that going into it with balance, getting that son around those positive male role models, consistently affirming them and giving them a space to be independent, and allowing them to make mistakes and allowing them to figure it out and allowing them to problem solve. I think those are good characteristics that they will need as they grow and develop into a man.
Amazing. And would you say there's certain things that with boys when they are transitioning, would you say it's important that and I'm talking about into young adolescents here, like simple little things that, the male body parts, for example, and even just hygiene and, the little things that I think what I've noticed from my own kind of experience is that, with my daughter, there was a lot of things that was quite very natural for me. I'm a female, so a lot of, her transition and when things were happening to her body and all of that, I've been through it myself. So those were very easy conversations to have. And, I didn't feel like, part of me was more shocked that, oh my gosh, this is happening already. Like, really? Slow down. This shouldn't be happening now. But the other side of me was like, oh, okay, we can have some girl talk here, But when it comes to the boys, would you say it's really something that mothers should do or they should seek out? Because, what you've just said, Dr. Solomon, is finding those men. How do you kind of say, could you just tell him about the stuff, that stuff? Yeah. Stuff that you.
Yeah. No, I think it goes back. And I think most certainly, single moms are doing this journey. You got to develop a healthy relationship with these mentors as well. So you can have that frank conversation. And if it's a really good mentor, he's going to always check in with you anyways to say, hey, how's he doing at home before, there's conversation. So I think that's a perfect space to say, hey, you know what, actually, here are some topics that I kind of been noticing that I want you to kind of have a conversation about. But I think there is some value in your son hearing that from a man to be able to help walk him through that process as he grows and develops. Because there are some things that women, and this is just my opinion here, just don't know. And they have to kind of go out there and get resources to seek help. Or I've seen it to where, earlier in my years of teaching and coaching, that young men would learn through trial and error, which is not always the best way as well. They were kind of, at home doing their own thing and just kind of figuring it out. And so us as coaches, we kind of have to say, well, actually, you're wrong about that. So I don't know, brother, that he works a lot in this space. He probably has more context.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of touched on everything, is really getting those resources, getting in community, because what I realize is that the mothers, even though they may seem alone in this aspect, especially as it pertains to raising a young male, it's a lot. It's a lot of you. And there are communities out there. You just have to be resilient in your search for them until you find the right one. But at the same time, allowing him to mature and doing your best to guide him along the way without having the guilt that you can't do certain things. And that's one thing that I've noticed a lot. A lot of the mothers they had this guilt and this shame about them for areas in which they couldn't necessarily provide in. And it was unfair to them because these were things that you just simply cannot do. Like, a man has to do these things. And I believe that when you can release that burden of shame and guilt, you can go out and get the resources that you need.
I love that.
And to answer that really quickly, because I know in the the work that we're doing, we talk about that. But again, this is my opinion here. You know, I've seen that too with moms, that guilt, but guilt for something that you were never designed to do, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's important to you. We know that single moms are trying to do it all, but you got to release yourself to say, I can't do it all. And some of these things I really wasn't designed to do. And I think that goes back to Brother Nate's point, to release yourself from that, because that's a heavy burden that you're trying to do. Just as men, there's certain things that women provide in terms of nurturing, and that it's just circle for us. We're going to need your support to do that. Again, that's just my opinion. I know your platform reaches across the world, but I think that's a point there as well.
Thank you so much. You know what? You have just hit the nail. I'm just really hoping for the ladies that are watching and that will be watching this, feels like, thank goodness, because that burden you do carry it, and it's only hearing you say it was not yours to carry in the first place. That is such a key thing to also remember. So thank you, because like I said, with this, you know, parenting journey and us embarking on it, and what's amazing about the two of you is that you're both not fathers yet, but you are fathers to many. You know, both of you are out there doing the work, you are investing, you are sowing seeds. I know you've just said, Dr. Solomon, you spent some time with your nephews. You know, all of that fundamentally important time is key. I was like last week, I was saying to myself that, you know what, I was at one point on a quest to make sure that I didn't want to be this label, this stereotype. I felt that my status being a single mom was something that if I didn't change was gonna like kind of dictate and determine how I was seen and how people would, you know, kind of respect me. So there was a time when I think I became quite infatuated and maybe a little bit idealistic on marriage. And I really wanted to be a missus, because I thought, if I become a wife and I find a male positive role model to introduce to my children to help me raise them and be that father figure for my son, then, you know, society would look at me like, oh, look, she's not a single mother, she's married, she's a missus, she's a wife. And I suddenly had to take that out of my thought pattern, because what it had begun to do was control my mind and started to make me feel a bit depressed and question a lot of my sense of, actually, have I failed as a mother? How is it that I've not managed to be successful in relationship? But what it had done is it made me revisit my past, my childhood. It allowed me to open up a therapeutic journey, which is embarking on counseling and unpacking some stuff that I didn't even realize was still very present to this day. And I say all of this to say that, would you say that as other single mothers that you might, you know, come into contact with, how can you actually say, how could, you know, we encourage them that regardless of their status, regardless of what society deems as kind of like, this is what you need to aspire to, how do we reassure individuals to be assured in their self? Because I've had to really become self-assured now, because I've had to let go of that narrative because it was just false.
Yeah, I'll say this to that, because that's a great and loaded question. I'll say this. You have to ask yourself, all of the mothers out there, all of the single women, ask yourselves, if you do happen to live up to the societal standards, right, that we see, will that equal happiness? And I think that that's one of the most important things, because society pushes a narrative at us, what we're supposed to be, what our family's supposed to be like, what our finance, like all of these different things. And you have to ask yourself, if you were to fulfill that box that society has there for you, would you actually feel happy, and would you be fulfilled, right? Would that equal that bliss for you, right? And if not, then you need to focus on yourself, right? And you need to create your own standards of what life looks like for you.
Yes, so true. So true, because we will constantly be trying to aspire to. And where will that ever end? And, you know, I'm wanting to, what I want to do is raise happy, fulfilled, balanced individuals who I can look back and say, do you know what? You did good. You know, that is a shoulder. You've got the right people around in your life, and recognize that even by not having who I would have ideally liked to have been in their lives, there has been key individuals who have sown some amazing seeds, who have left and imparted in them stuff that's going to take them into their adulthood. And, you know, it's, I tell you, I look at just this weekend gone, my daughter's finished, you guys would call it, well, we call it secondary school. So it's from 12 to 16. So she's just come to the end. So the next stage is college, right? So now I'm dealing with a 16-year-old who is going to be 17 this year, who is now transitioning into her next journey of education. And it makes me, and when I look at just the child that I've managed to produce, I look back and I think, yeah, you did all right. You know, sometimes the next one now is just, it's getting my son. And I think most mothers' worries, and we know, and especially what's going on in America, we have it over here. The natural worry is for our boys. Do you know why? Because it takes nothing for them to get, you know, enticed by the wrong influences. You know, all it takes, and you can, sometimes we can think, I've got my finger on the pulse here, I've got my eye on the ball, I know what's happening, and it just takes one thing. What do we do to, I don't want to say prevent, but how can we get in a little bit more early? Because I'm really passionate about us saving our boys. In the UK, we have quite a lot of different things going on, very similar to what you guys got going on in the States. And I sometimes wonder, the responsibility has to be us. It's nobody else. It's not societies. It's not the government. It's our responsibility. I don't subscribe to the blame game or it's because of this. We have to sort it out. We really do. How do we become, other than what we're doing with the tools and everything else, how do we become really proactive that we stand up to say, no, not our boys. These are the children that are going to, you know, make it in life, in society. They're going to be respectable young men. How do we kind of champion that?
That's good. Did you want to go on that one?
No. I think Brother Nate is right in that space. So go ahead.
Something that's huge in regards to that is going to be consistency. And what I mean by that is this. We can have the moments where we are like, rah, 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 our boys are going to be this, we're going to step up and do this, right? But there's a part when that fizzles out. You know, when the lights dimmer down, the event is no longer going on, the program's over. Now we have to be consistent on how we show up on a day-to-day basis, knowing that our young men are going to make mistakes. They're going to do really stupid things. But at the same time, that love still needs to be there consistently every single day. And when we show up in that way, we won't need as many events and as many, huge spectacles and programs, because consistently we'll be showing up with a discipline that ultimately leads to love and ultimately will change and will help them to put them in the right direction to become those stand-up gentlemen that we're discussing. But it starts with us practicing the discipline to remain consistent, knowing that there's going to be a lot of turbulence along this journey. There's going to be some ups and downs. We're going to see some amazing young men, but then at the same time, we're going to have some young men who are rough, and we can't exclude them. We're all in one, right? They're all in one, and we can't exclude the ones that we consider the bad apples. You know, we have to keep them in and nourish them just as much, because they matter just as the ones who are on the straight and narrow, the ones who are being the role models. And when we can show up for both groups, I think that's when things will really change in a mighty and powerful way. And that's how we show up. It's really consistency.
Yeah, it so is. And I'm so glad you said that, because that is what is really important, that consistency, that, you know, even in a child's life, if a child knows that on every other weekend, so for example, my son plays football, so it's training on a Tuesday, Saturday is also training, and Sunday is match days. So he's got a routine, he's got consistent, he's got his football coaches. There's so many, when I look around at who is there and who's consistent, they are individuals who are consistent, because he knows he's going to see them on a Tuesday and on a Saturday and on a Sunday at match days. And it made me realize that even with the consistency of me taking him, because it is a big ask. The other day I was having a bit of a moment, I'm not going to lie. I was in the car park whilst it was a bit cold over here. We've only just started to get better weather. And I sat and I started to think, everything is me. I have to do football. I have to do, properly started to feel really sorry for me. Had a little pity party, guys. I'm just being honest, a little pity party. And I had a call with my friend, and she really humbled me. She said, Fiona, do you know something? There's many women that would love to be you right now. She said, there's women who are waiting for IVF. There's women who, and suddenly I realized, actually, as much as I'm doing all of this, I'm in my car. I don't have to take London Transport or the bus. I'm in my, I started to really remember the blessings, and I was looking at this fit, energetic boy, no ailments. He's able to run. I watched him, and I had to just really reframe my circumstance and really look at the blessing of it. This is a fit boy, this is an able boy, this is a gifted boy. I have my, and I started to think, I felt so humbled. I said, you know what, thank you for reminding me, because we do need those reminders.
We do.
We can feel like woe is me, but just remembering that. And even the dad that took him and his son to football coaching last week, I said to the dad, I said, thank you so much. I said, I really need this respite. And he was like, not at all. He said to me, it's a pleasure. And I suddenly realized that there's people out there that are doing things from their heart that can help. And what I want to echo through this is to say to others that are out there, there are support, there is support, there are individuals who will, step in and step up, and there are resources as well. And this is what Dr. Solomon and I, and even Nate, what we want to kind of do going forward is looking at how we can begin to put forums, even when our guide comes out and we begin to talk about effective ways of how to improve the single parent experience. This is what it's all about. It's all about us talking about the stuff that many people, because, we've been taught to be strong women, Black women, we can hold it, we can handle it, we're strong, we're this. The reality of it is we may be resilient, we may be able to endure, we may be able to put on face and keep it moving, but we're human, we're human beings, and we're raising a very different generation. So there are things that I sometimes have to make sure that I'm really on the ball, especially with these techie generation that we're raising. They're very clever, Let's not get it twisted. They're clever little things. So they know things that I have to make sure that I'm a little bit one step ahead of the game to say, look, you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes, son. And on that note, how can we as leaders in this space and as authority figures in this space who are now championing it, because I'm not going to stop going on about this until we see dynamic change, till we are influencing policy, till people are calling on us and say, we love your approach, we love your guides, we love your book. How can we implement your resources across? Because that's the positions I see us getting to, because we have the solutions and we are creating them. And it starts with self. The reason why I put myself, I never wanted to be that person that, don't worry, motherhood is this, I've got it all together. I'm the single mom with all the, no, I'm a single mama who got a little boy that I need some help with, When you put yourself in that position where people be like, oh, so you also are going through that, it's relatable, it's relatable. So on that note, I mean, how do we kind of encourage the masses now, the masses, the people who also want to reform, because there are individuals who want to pay it forward. They know they've made some mistakes. They know that they probably could have done a lot better with what they had, and their influence has corrupted, can I say, a generation. How do we even kind of allow for those individuals, because they might even be able to reach those really hard to crack people that we won't even begin to know where to start those conversations, you know?
I think that it goes back to, what we were saying earlier. I think that, we all have to do the self work to be okay with telling our story, to understand that the things that hurt us or impacted us is because it's our assignment to heal it. And there's so many, you talk about people's voices who aren't being utilized. That's an audience that I believe that we're all assigned to a specific audience in life. And so individuals who are not utilizing their voices and their stories, that's an audience that's lacking. And I think that we've got to come to terms with that. I think that we got to be okay with that. It's going to look different for everybody. As I mentioned earlier, some may decide to do a platform like what Brother Nate and I have done, or they decide to write a book, or they may decide just to volunteer in a local organization, or they just may decide to just kind of approach it on an organic one-on-one basis. I think that there's this mindset that it has to look a certain way for it to be impactful, and that's just not true. I mean, there are multiple ways. Then there are other ways, as you just mentioned, with policy, and we need more educators, we need more teachers, we need more. I mean, there's so many ways to get out there to share your story, to make impact, or if you just want to be the individual that helps fundraise for certain causes. I mean, that matters as well. And so I think that individuals who may be watching got to be okay to know you got to find your lane where you find yourself most comfortable, but regardless, share your story to really kind of make impact, because it'll all work together to serve kind of this overarching mission.
Amazing. Wow. So powerful, because we all have our own unique part to play, isn't it? And that's so key. And when we look at like Dr. Solomon, when we did the live very recently, and that young lady who, she was so open and sharing her story about her son, people, what I'm getting to realize, the more we have real life conversations, and when I say real life conversations, it's what's going on behind closed doors. When I close my door and I switch off my social media and I put down that phone, it's what's going on in my home. It's what I'm dealing with. And when I'm able to find an outlet or an avenue or help, to make me manage all of this load, it makes me realize that, I mean, that young lady, just to follow through, I was able to sign. I did have a conversation with her. I have picked up with her. She is now receiving support for her son. And there's a lot of things going on behind the background. And, it made me realize that these conversations, we could talk about the lighthearted stuff all day long. But you see the fundamentals of what really matters and what's going to shape society. As they say, the hand that rocks the cradle shapes the world. So there is an investment that needs to be made in mothers. There needs to be made in our children, that needs to be made even in you young men who are like community activists, leaders who are operating in these spaces where you're championing the cause, but you're also supporting us as your sisters to say, look, I'm going to back my sister. I'm going to support my sister during whatever's going on. We need you, because some of us haven't been dealt, like I said, the best cards, and not everybody would take the approach that I have taken, because you're dealing with matters of the heart. We know we've been taught to guard our heart with all diligence, because out of it is the issues of life. And what we're dealing with is the issues of life as a result of brokenheartedness, those people that have disappointed individuals. But we now are trying to repair, restore, and recover, even as a nation. And we're still on that recovery journey. And it's, as we started and said, it begins with us. It begins and ends with us. And that's why I've made it my duty to go and seek therapy, because I know that there are areas that I probably could have done different. I'm not always right. I'm not going to play the victim and be like, oh, because of this. Take responsibility and go out, try and seek the healing, but then go back out there and say, look, guys, this is how I did it. These are the tools. these are the resources, these are the individuals that I can hook you up with, come and join our gang, come and, in get entangled with us, because these are the things that we now know work. We now know. I mean, where are you, Nate?
I'm in New Jersey.
You're in New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey.
Solomon is in Texas and I'm in London, and we've come together with common interests on a common ground in 3 different locations, across the world. Even that alone is just mind blowing, So it's powerful. It's powerful. And I really look forward to what we're going to do, how we're going to kind of really begin to implement this. I've got a lot of interest. Dr. Solomon and I, we've got a press release coming out about the guide. We're also going to be doing a lot more. Nate, you're going to be coming on and sharing. We're looking at workshops. The edits, you're going to love the edits to the summit. Wait till you see it. Nate, you're going to love it. It's so exciting. I'm excited. All these things coming out. And what's been amazing is we done that in March, guys. We're now in June,
Wow.
Yeah.
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Yeah.
So anything that anyone wants to share as we're coming down? Have you got anything coming up? Anything about your resources and stuff like that? Do you want to share and just kind of signpost people to your handles? Anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. So essentially you can find me anywhere social media wise at Nate Evans Jr. It's under my name, the same as my website, Nate Evans Jr. I'm working on some programs and different things now, specifically for parents or single parents, mothers. That's going to be a resource as well. It'd probably be in the PDF kind of format, ebook format. So be on the lookout for that soon. Definitely stay tuned into my social media pages, as well as my YouTube channel, where I'll be making some more announcements as well. Hoping to bring over Fiona to my podcast and interview her as a guest. Because I believe that there are a lot of people out there that need to hear her story, and how she's being able to flourish now and the resources that she has. I think it's super important that my audience gathers that stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yay, I'd definitely love to be on your podcast, because it's all about us sharing resources. What I want us to do is I want us to become a directory, guys. I want us to become such a resource. And when people go, it's like a menu card. They're like, oh, that's for this one, that one, because then we can be able to show people that, look, we are resourceful. We've got people in our camp that have access to what you need. So 100%. And we've just got to keep the momentum. That's what we want to do. Keep that candle burning, keep the fire burning, so that it will just catch. After a while, people will be like, wow, these guys have started a movement. So 100%. And Dr. Solomon, where can people
So you can find me on IG at Dr. Solomon Tension, and the King of Me series is still live on Amazon, and that's via the link in my bio. And we've got so many opportunities and things that are coming up throughout late summer and fall from our new Man Cave series. We've got a new podcast dropping, and we got 2 other big projects that we're working on as well. So excited to continue this work.
Fantastic. Excellent. Podcast is coming out. We've got the guide coming out. I'm telling you, we are going to shake this nation. We are going to leave a mark on this earth, legacy, all these resources that it's like we are chronic. This is what you call, when we chronicle these chronological events in life, when we look back, the generations that will come after us will be like, wow, look what we've left for them. There's no, I think we've got no excuses. The way that we've got technology at our fingertips now, and the way that we can connect with one another, we got no excuses. The generation before us, maybe not so. The generation before them, ouch. But us, we got no excuses.
No excuses.
We got no excuses. So on that note, gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to having you guys back, and we will be discussing more about how we can improve the single parent experience, how we can sow into mothers, how we can help mothers raising this next generation of young men, future leaders. We don't want to give up on these young men. We want to make sure that we sow and invest in them, and we need you. We need men like you, Nate and Dr. Solomon, who are going to say to us, and even like I've always said to Dr. Solomon when we've talked, if I say anything that you don't agree with, correct me. you know, say, actually, sis, I don't agree with that. Pull me up.
Absolutely.
You know, you hold me accountable. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how we grow. You know, that's how we improve. And if there's anything that I say and you think, no, Fiona, that's not the right approach, correct me. I give you permission. You know, correct me and draw me in line and say, lady, I don't agree with that. So on that note, I'm going to wind down and say a big thank you. Thank you to my guests who have watched. We'll be back with another show soon, and we're going to wind down.